This is Professor Minton, and we're about to embark upon the budgeting section, chapters 22 and 23 of your accounting text. And what I thought I would do is, and of course you are responsible for reading the text and watching the PowerPoints that I produce, and also for whatever you see here. Because what I'm doing here is I'm providing you with a with a raw budget, and to give you some idea of how a budget actually works. And of course, I'm going to just come down here at the bottom, and you notice that I have various tabs down here at the bottom. And so this is the master budget tab, and it takes into effect all of the selling expenses, administrative expenses, the cost of goods sold, and everything. Right now it has the sales number in there, but it's only for January because I have to start out at some point, and then we're going to work from that particular point. So you'll see what that's about in just a minute. And here's the sales budget. And of course, this is where you're going to spend most of your time. If you're in the management staff of a company and you're responsible for participating in the budgeting process, this is where you'll spend most of your time. You know, a lot of the things that we can talk about, say material costs and so forth, we can get a pretty good handle on those things, and I'll explain how we do that as we go through. With respect to the products themselves, if you've got competition, we always have to look at what kind of cost increases or decreases do you think that we will end up with as we go through the process. And we'll look at every single product, and if we have if we're selling these products, and I'm making the assumption here, I'm going to pop back over here, that I'm selling each one of these individually, but notice that this one has a cap on it, this is a cap by itself, and this one is a base plus this plus the cap. Now this base and this cap are treated as one item, because when we sell them, we're actually going to sell this entire component. But because this is made out of a different kind of plastic than this and this is polyethylene, and this is polypropylene. And polyethylene is a plastic that is firmer, less flexible, and this of course is a more flexible one. If you want to think about a corollary in your own lives, think about a Dasani, okay, that you go down to or Coca-Cola or whatever, you go down to the store and buy. If you think about it, the body of the bottle itself is fairly flexible. That's the polypropylene side here. The cap, of course, is pretty rigid, and that would be these two components. And so they're made out of different kinds of plastics, and you'll see that in a second too. Okay. So popping back over to the sales budget here, and I suppose I should walk you through the rest of these first. This, and I guess I was working on something here, and I shouldn't have been. Let me just leave that for the moment. This is a materials budget, because when you calculate your sales budgets in terms of the units that you anticipate selling for each month, when you do that, then you're going to have to convert those sales units into material costs. And these, by the way, this materials budget, these are actually called bills of material. And so I have the polypropylene usage here for the small cap and the small spout and the large spout and so forth. And of course polypropylene is going to cost you the same per pound, irrespective of which one of these products you're going to use. The cost per pound stays the same. What happens is, of course, the usage changes, because the smaller the product, the less the usage, etc. Same thing over here for polyethylene. Polyethylene, in this case, we've said that the cost is 80 cents a pound, and the usage, of course, fluctuates based upon the size of the product and so forth. Here we have an estimated cost change of 4%. Here we have an estimated cost change of 3%. And so let me just get rid of this for the moment. get rid of this because we'd have to calculate these. And by furnishing you with the raw budget, of course, then you can go through and make these calculations following what I'm doing here on the screen for you. Same thing is true here for your direct labor. You have people that are operating machines and so forth, and when that happens, you have a direct labor budget as well. This should say 2024, by the way. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stretch this on out so that it covers the entire screen. Same thing here. All I'm doing is just merging and centering these cells. And the same thing for the last one. It is just aesthetics. They don't make it doesn't really matter whether it's sitting over here or sitting here in the middle. Same difference in terms of what we need it for. Okay, now this would be a very long video if I did the entire thing, so I'm just going to kind of get you acclimated here, and I'll do the sales budget. We have other budgets as well. We have the factory overhead budget, and if you think about molding operations, and that's what this is a molding operation. So if you think about that kind of operation, what you're going to have is a lot of machines that are doing the molding and not a lot of manpower. So whenever we do a budget, we have to make a decision about what your budgeting base is. And in this case, we've selected machine hours because the factory that we're talking about in this case would be very heavy in machines and very light in actual direct labor. However, we do have some direct labor that's involved, and these are people who are, standing at the machine and making sure that things are coming off like they're supposed to and so forth. Very low maintenance kind of stuff, if you want to know the truth. And eventually probably those people would not exist because as the machines become more and more sophisticated, we need fewer and fewer direct labor people to stand there and watch them. It would be a pretty boring job if you think about it anyway, so you probably wouldn't want to do it. But anyway, here is the machine hours that would be used for each one of these products, and of course you should see the same kind of a thing in that you probably have a little bit of increase as you have as the product size increases. Maybe not. It just depends on the part coming off. Some things come off at, if you think about a machine here, and we're producing a particular part. Well, we're not going to produce one part at a time. Sometimes the mold may have 16 parts, and sometimes the mold may have 24 parts, and so forth. And so it takes about the same amount of time with these injection molding machines to generate 24 as it does 16. It just depends on how much you're willing to spend for the molds themselves, and whether your machine is big enough to handle a mold with a lot more product coming off. So so it wouldn't necessarily follow that you would have more machine hours for a product if you have a mold that's accommodating more product. Okay, all right. And this would be the cost per machine hour, and the machine hours would be calculated based upon a huge number of things, and we'll get more into that when you get into the finance side, because in the finance side we're going to be concerned really about specifically how much money is costing us to generate inventory, because inventory is going to be such a huge component of that. But you'll use a lot of the same information. The difference basically is that with forecasting, you're doing usually 3 years out, 5 years out, and with budgeting, you're doing just for the upcoming year. So that's really the only difference between the amount of information that you're going to have for both of these items, although there's more concentration placed in the finance area on cash flow than there probably is in our budgeting area. We're more concerned about the actual I've been doing this for years now, and it keeps keep using the same things, and sometimes I change them and sometimes I don't. Apologize for that. But anyway, I'm going to kind of clean this one up just a little bit. Factory overhead, of course, is based upon what the kinds of things that aren't related to direct labor or material itself, but we have costs. Like, so for example, when I have molding machines, maybe they have oil spills, so I have to have product, quick dry or something like that you put on those oil spills. By the way, we use the same kind of product, just so you know. For those of you who played baseball and the pitcher's mound gets wet, and sometimes the batting box gets wet, so you put the same quick dry kind of material down that you do to gather oil spills. Anyway, all this useless information that you're getting here. And the same thing is true. We're going to have an estimated cost change in machine hours and so forth, and this is an altogether different area, and I'm not trying to actually show you necessarily all of those. Again, the finance class will go into that in more detail than this 2102 class, which is more of an overview of what we're trying to do. But you have to actually calculate these costs and budget them and budget for them. So, how much quick dry are you going to use? How much supervision for the floor are you going to use? What is not just the supervisor salary, but you have to consider their taxes. You have to consider the rent on a building if you're renting a building. You have to consider the depreciation on a building if you own the building. You have to consider the depreciation on the machines when you have those machines. I mean, and the list just goes on and on and on, all related to the production process. So it's quite involved in actually calculating the machine hour cost. And the change, of course, could be just a percentage change that you look at and you say, well, I think my costs are going to go up by 1% or 2% or whatever the case would be. And hopefully we can recover some of that in our sales budget. And then the next thing we would look at, of course, and I don't see, here's the cost of goods sold. I don't have anything in there for that yet, I think. So it's good because we could just put it in there. And here's selling expense. The only thing I have in the selling expense is the variable and the fixed. And so we'll talk about that, and we'll put a few items in here and so forth in upcoming videos to get the administrative side. And then if we have some other income and expense for budgeting purposes, and those are things that we're not really anticipating. If we have to close a unit down or something like that, or get rid of a product, I mean, there's all sorts of things that could go into this other income and expense side. Let me pop back over here to the sales budget, because this is the one that we really want to concentrate on today. And I've already down here included some price changes. And so again, if I haven't already mentioned this, you're going to look at this very, very carefully. Here's my unit price currently. What do I think? And if you can imagine sitting around in a big room, and you got the president in there, and the chief financial officer, and the chief engineering officer, and you maybe have the chief information officer, depending upon what kind of business you're in. In this particular business, it'd probably be less likely to have a chief information officer in this particular situation. You'd have the production, the plant manager and the head of production, maybe those guys would be in there. And you'd sit around and you'd say, well, ask your marketing guy, we're currently selling product A for $3, and so what kind of price increase do you think we can get? And so he might say, well, probably 4%. And remember, why do you hire people to be your marketing or sales people? Because they're optimistic, right? So, and this gets into an entirely different area. And again, you'll see some of that in finance, where we look at the ideal case, where we look at the worst case scenario, we look at the most likely scenario, and just for argument's sake, let's just say that the best case scenario is worth 5%, the worst case scenario is worth 15%, and the expected scenario, the average scenario, would be worth 80%, and then you would take that 4% increase, and you would look at that as the best case scenario, and then the worst case scenario, you can't get anything, or maybe it's negative, and so you just multiply that, right? 4% times the 5% chance, and then what your expected one is maybe 2%, and you take that times 80%. Anyway, it's a quite involved process. It's not simple at all. And so you have to, being part of that group that actually makes those decisions, carries with it a lot of responsibility, because those budgets are typically going to go to your corporate offices, for example. And so think about it in a grand scale. And so I have a pretty good sized company here, and I'm budgeting for that company, and those budgets will go up and will be consolidated with the headquarters company's budgets and everybody else's budget, if you got 30 or 40 different divisions. And then your CEO of your headquarters company is going to go out, and he's going to talk to the stock market people. He's going to talk to analysts and so forth, and then he's going to say, well, here's some guidance that we have in terms of our expected profitability and our expected revenues and so forth. And so he's under a lot of pressure, because if he misses those projections when the actual numbers come in, then he or she is going to be pretty embarrassed, having missed those projections. And if missing them either way could potentially be a problem, because if you're missing them by underestimating what you thought you were going to do, then maybe you don't have great control of your business. And if you're overestimating, then obviously you don't have great control of your business either. So, in either scenario, it presents some problems for the CEO who's out there trying to make a case for the company. Because remember that the more stock you sell, the more capitalization you have, and so forth. Anyway, okay. So this is by the way, the right-hand side of your balance sheet that I'm talking about now, where how you finance your business. Okay, so and this will be the only one I'll do on this video, and then the other videos that will come, we'll go through and do some other aspects of this budget. Okay, so let's assume for a moment here that we expect that February, because how many days are in February? Typically 28. How many days in January? Typically 31. So you may have fewer working days in February, right? So you could say that in February we expect this to be 98%. So I'm going to say that January product A number times 0.98. And 39.2 would be the volume for that. And I could say that because it's February, and if that's the only thing I'm considering, which it wouldn't be, but just to make it simple, we'll just take all of these times that. Okay, March, again, we come back up to a normal 31 days, and so maybe we have the same number of working days, but we'd actually calculate these, by the way, because even though a month has 31 days, it could have 21, or it could have 20 or 19 days worth of production days, depending. Okay, we don't sell things generally on weekends, so, and we may be closed during on holidays, so you would be looking at various things related to holidays. Okay, so that could reduce it as well. In this case, just to make it simple, I'm just going to say this is going to be equal to the number that we had in January, and I'm going to drag it down as well. And of course, all of these things over here have been calculated, right? And the dollars are of course calculated from the restated unit prices down here. So if I look at this, for example, I have 66. That's this number up. Where is that number? Oh, G6. I'm sorry, G6. So if I come over to G and come down to 6, that's this number. That's what I thought it was. Times then this number for this guy. Okay, and so forth, because I hope that I've moved them down each time, but I check it to make sure because it's important that you get it right. Okay, and then April of course may have a day shorter, but April has does April have a particular holiday or something in it? And I think, yeah, April probably does. So we might want to say that it's 2% higher in terms of volume here. So again, it'd be equal to the March number times 1.02, and that's the same as saying 2% plus 100%. And we say the same thing across the board. Again, we wouldn't do it like this. I mean, I'm just giving you some kind of broad brush stuff. We're going to look through and say, okay, do you think that this is going to be the same for product B, for product C, product D? I mean, we'll go through if we have 200 products. So this part of the budget, this is the most significant part, the sales budget. We're going to spend lots and lots of time on it. And we're going to expect people who are participating in that process to be able to give us good solid numbers or good solid reasons why they took certain numbers, okay? Why they said it was going to be 1%, why they said that they expect to get a 2% increase in volume, those kind of things. I mean, this is not a kind of a throw it up against the wall kind of thing. This is a very serious process that we have to go through to make sure that we do this correctly. Okay, May, I'm just going to say it's equal to the same number as April. And again, I'm doing this just for expediency purposes. June and July and August, these are typically, well, actually May, June, and July are typically kind of slower months in most businesses, because most businesses have some are cyclical to some extent. And so I'm going to say that this is only going to be 96 for the next 2 months. So it's going to be equal to this number times 0.96. Oops. And drag it down. I don't even really have to do that. Okay. Here we go. And we'll say the same thing here. Is equal to this times 0.96. And again, just remember that this is an oversimplification. You're not going to do anything this quickly. It's going to take you a while to do it. And in August, and maybe certainly the last quarter, typically you have some increases that you see. But I'm going to base those increases on these numbers instead of these numbers over here, because we have some that we have to recover. Okay, so this is going to be equal to this number times, call it 1.01, and then we can say that this is equal to this number times 1.02, for example, and we're going to build up here. Equal to this number times 1.0125, and just throwing things out here, of course. And then November has it's going to be a shorter work week and all of that, so or shorter work month, so equal to this times 0.96, and this one's even going to be shorter because you have Christmas. Although you may have more unit sales because people are buying stuff, so they may offset one another. And again, those are the kind of questions that you're asking in every one of these instances. So in this case, I'm going to say that it's equal to, let's call it the highest month here. All right, so I'm just going to grab all of these here and drag them down. And notice all of these fill in here, and if I look over here, the sales budget, oops, I'm sorry, got to go one more. The master budget, now you see that I have all of these numbers filled in for January through December. And then we have to go and calculate our cost of goods sold, which is going to be this materials budget plus the direct labor budget plus the factory overhead budget. And but we're at 26 minutes now in the video, and that's probably about enough time for for us to call it for this particular section. Now, again, this is a raw budget that you're being presented with. You can do whatever you want to with it. Don't worry about making a mistake. If you mess it up, just delete it, download it again, start it again, try it again, or download or just delete the sections that you think you've messed up. This is a lot of accounting, and a lot of and this is the internal side of accounting. This is the managerial side of accounting. A lot of this is hit and miss, and a lot of this is what if scenarios, and we play those quite often. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. If we want to say, let's just say, for example, that we want to give everybody an increase, all of the direct labor personnel an increase in pay. Well, what we would do is we would go out, and if I went to my direct labor budget here, and I were to look at the cost per, I'd say, well, what would happen if that went to 28? And that to 19 and 23 and so forth. Or the estimated change, let's just say I want to give them a 2% change, right? And so I'll just call it 1.02. And then this would be equal to this number times 1 for the 27 plus 2 for the change. And notice I almost never, and I really am never going to point and make and do an Excel, call this a number, if I don't have to. I could make this over here, I could put this over here someplace and just reference it as an absolute reference, but since I'm only dealing with 5 products here, I'm not going to worry about it. And when I do that, then I'll just drag this one down. And these are your new costs for the product. And then what you have to do is notice that in this case I haven't tied yet the unit sales yet to my cost of direct labor. So I'd have to do that. I also have to estimate what my beginning inventory is and my desired ending inventory. And this is, again, this is almost more of this side of it, it's almost more of a finance side as we calculate these inventory needs and wants and so forth. And again, we'll use the same product, except I'll change the name of it to Forecast Raw, and we'll use the same product to go through and calculate that. But to give you an idea how this would look, since we do have already these, notice that this is the calculation here, and so it's very simple to do. I'm going to say that it's equal to, and I'm going to find the sales budget, and I'm going to find February's number and hit enter, and that gives me that But what I forget? Well, I forgot that I have to multiply it times the product cost. So if I go back to that number times the cost per, now that looks more reasonable, doesn't it? And notice that if you remember, we made this, because it's February, we made it 0.98. So if I look down through here, I should see each one of these numbers being a little bit less than the previous number, right? And I have to be careful here, because if I'm going to use this, going forward on this one, then I'm going to have to change this to an absolute. And this is more than I really wanted to do for this video. But, and then I have to change each one of these, of course, to the absolute. This is simply F4. But if I don't change this to an absolute, it'll want to go over here to get the next number. We can't have that. The relative reference on the other side is fine. In other words, it's always going to go to the next month and the next item. But I have to make the cost, which is only showing up one time, I have to make it an absolute, otherwise it'll come over here and give you a 0. So I'm just highlighting that cost and giving it an F4 so that it always uses that cost. Whoops. Come on. And I'll change that to a 9, and we should be good then. And then what I can do is I can take it and just move the whole thing all the way over. And then all I have to do is calculate my estimated beginning inventory and my desired ending inventory. And of course, this number here, you're going to use the same template next year. So this number here will become the estimated beginning inventory with some tweaks that you may have to make. If it's far different than what you expected when you did your budget, then you'll have to make those tweaks. But basically, what you're going to do here is you're going to have this number plus all of these minus this desired ending inventory to get you your total. Okay. But anyway, if I come back over here to the sales budget now, and then the master budget, that's going to be eventually part of the cost of goods sold after we get the direct labor budget and and we'll have to add them up, right? So my materials budget, do I even have it yet? I don't have it. So we have to calculate that, and we'll do that in the next video. We'll do the materials budget, the direct labor budget, and the overhead budget. The total of those per month will wind up on your master budget here as a cost of goods sold. And with that, we'll conclude this one. It ran over a little bit further than I wanted it to. I usually like to keep these around 25 minutes or so.